Do you have a great admiration for people who don't even exist? Do you know histories of fake worlds better than you know your own? Do you geek out? If so, geek out with us here now. It's the Geek for All show.
It is, in fact, the Geek for All. How's it going? I am your host, Geekmeister. With me, as always, Professor Weirdfuck.
Hi.
And we have our head panelist, Winchester.
Hello.
Because we finally decided to give Sam a nickname, so it's Winchester. And if you don't get that reference, catch up on your Supernatural. It's good to be back, good to be here, and we're going to be talking Star Trek today. We just had the 50th anniversary, like a week or so ago.
Yeah.
So, it's probably good for us to talk about that. I mean, it's one of the more influential science fiction shows ever.
Yeah.
All right, so let's just start at a really obvious point. What's everyone's favorite Star Trek series?
All right. Well, as far as like TV shows go, Next Generation was really awesome. Like classic Star Trek TV show. No way, I couldn't like get into it. But the original Crew movie series was probably my favorite as a kid.
Okay,
Like
that's fair.
Rathacon,
And I would totally
Search for
argue
Spock.
that counts as its own sort of series within everything else.
Oh yeah.
I think I'd have to go TNG.
Next Generation?
Yeah, Next Generation. I think it's kind of it was a thing I saw first. So, and like with pretty much anything else, whatever you see first generally is your favorite.
Yeah.
It just seemed to kind of maybe it's because I didn't get into the original series because it was a little more hard to get into, I guess.
Yeah.
I think I felt more of a connection to the TNG characters.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was like on in the mid '90s, right? Late '90s.
Yeah, I think so.
Something like that. So that was like on TV all the time when we were kids.
Yeah.
And the story, some of the storylines and like some of the episodes, the writing is just, it was different. It was far out. Like really, there were a couple episodes. I forget what the episode was when Picard. They find that like kind of distress beacon.
Yeah.
And it made Picard like go out, and he was like in the society.
Oh yeah.
With the distress beacon that was sent, but they were
Yeah.
already dead.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was nuts, and he lived like a lifetime, within that society, like that world, and woke up. It was only an hour.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, very, very good one. I would say for me, it's a really, really close call. And I mean, it's all kind of a close call for me because, like, I grew up watching both the movies and Next Generation. And then, like, I mean, that in my formative years, and, like, before 10, I was watching that. And then, like, when I was, like, sort of in, like, my adolescence, we as a family, like, you had to pick like what show the family was gonna like watch because you had like the one TV.
Right.
And even if you didn't, sometimes depending on your cable provider, you still
still
had
had
to
to
watch
watch
the
the
same
same show.
Right.
When satellite first came on, and it was one show for the entire house.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So back in those days, you kind of had to figure it out. And so one of the shows that we watched as a family was Star Trek Voyager.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But then later on, and it's a toss-up really between Voyager and Deep Space Nine, because I watched Deep Space Nine like once I kind of got into college. I really, really checked that show out, and it's really, really fantastic because I don't know if like the thing is that Voyager is much closer to like what a Star Trek show is supposed to be like in the terms of exploration,
Right.
and in terms of like human discovery and stuff. Although that does happen in Deep Space Nine, but Deep Space Nine was way, way different, which is I think what I kind of found really interesting about it is that it was like this whole different take on being in that universe. This was like, okay, you're kind of in Federation territory, but it's really sort of neutral territory that you just helped, form.
Yeah.
And so there's like, the things don't work out here the same way, and you've got all of this like crazy political tension taking place
Right.
between the Bajorans and the Cardassians. Cardassians.
Kardashians.
Not Kardashian. Kardashian. Although many people have taken advantage of that particular sound alike. But yeah, no, I always just found that one to be really captivating, just because it was like there was always, you never knew exactly who had what angle going on. It was like they took Star Trek, Gunsmoke, and like the Avengers, the old British television series, not Marvel stuff. It's like they took those three shows and somehow spun them into like one thing, and like there was never a lack of interest going on. Well, the first season was a little bit slow because they were setting all of it up.
Right.
And once they jumped into it, you were just like, oh my god! Like you said, you never knew who had what planned.
Yeah.
And I've always found that one really interesting. So that was my favorite. But it is a weird one. Like that's definitely like the oddball of like all the Star Trek shows.
Yeah.
I would say. And I mean, I think the biggest has unquestionably been, of course, the Next Generation. Like
Definitely.
You know.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, it was so out there. Like out there was exactly the word for it. Not that the first one wasn't. It just still didn't get noticed.
Well, it's just the first one was the first step towards something like that. And it was just so low budget, so cheesy.
Well,
like,
it was one of the first American.
Well, yeah.
Because you had Doctor Who was
yeah.
the big British movement into sci-fi, into television sci-fi.
Right.
And they, you know, you can watch the documentaries and the history on that because it's a little bit older than Star Trek.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
by much.
Not
Only
by
by a couple
much.
years.
Right.
But this was like the first American kind of television. Everybody kind of looked at it and they were like,
Yeah.
no. And like even when Roddenberry did the pilot, they didn't like the pilot. And then they were like, you know what, we're gonna give you a second chance.
Mm-hmm.
And they did the second episode.
And then he got Shatner.
And then he got Shatner, and then they picked it up. They still had to fight to get renewed.
Yeah.
Like it was a huge letter writing thing. Like you hear stories of like all of these shows. Like my big thing I remember was when like Charmed was gonna get canceled. So everyone sent in candles. They sent it. Obviously they didn't send in like Athames, but they sent in candles. They sent in all of these things that reminded you of the show. When Roswell was getting canceled, people would send in bottles of hot sauce because that was like the iconic thing.
Yeah.
This was a huge. It was one of the, from what I understand, it was one of the first big movements for the audience to save the show.
No, I actually don't. I think there's only a couple of examples, and on very, very small notice besides that. Like this was the first time that you had more than like 1,000 people looking to do this. Like that was what this was, and it was huge. It changed the game forever as far as the television industry was concerned, because there was always sort of, there's the ratings, and the ratings were how you could tell if you were doing well or not. And I mean, that still is definitely true to today. But then there's that bit about whether or not, and it's hilarious, even though it's proven itself to be extremely beneficial time and time again, there are still television producers who don't pay attention to what fans are saying.
Right.
And they wind up always suffering because of it, almost always, or at least the show winds up suffering because of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, there's plenty of examples of like where they maybe listen to their fans a little too much.
Yeah.
And we all have talked about what happens when that kind of
when that happens, it's a problem. But you do need to listen to your fans at the same time and not just totally ignore them.
Right.
And that's what happened with Star Trek. It ultimately still wound up getting canceled in the end. But I mean, they brought it back it was like, so what? They did the first season, had to fight for the renewal in the second season, and then
they got one more season.
Right.
It was a total of 3.
Yeah, and then they canceled after that. But then they got the backing for movies.
Which, would spark a whole big following, especially with The Wrath of Khan. Like, that's such a big landmark in all of it. Then they had that one, I remember my dad was always watching on New Year's Eve. The one where they go back in time. The one with the whales.
Oh, yeah.
5?
Yeah, 5, yeah.
I don't remember the subtitle as to that, but yeah.
Wait, was it The Voyage Home?
Yes, I believe it is.
Okay.
If I'm not very much mistaken, yes, it is that one. That one's a weird one. But you know what? It was interesting.
Oh yeah.
It was.
Sure.
That was the thing. Even when they went off on these extremely strange journeys in the movie, which they did. Those movies like went. Quest for Spock
Yeah.
Oh my god! Like, talk about like an acid trip incarnate. Like,
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
dude.
man, I don't know if I've ever completely understand the plot to that movie. Like, I'm dead serious. Like,
Just
there's
have to
still like so
rewatch
many
it.
things about it that I'm just like, every time I'm like, did he dream that, or did that happen, or
Like you lost
both?
me. I don't know.
I can't even.
Yeah, like, I can't even. I have turned into a white girl.
And that's one of the things, like, I think that you take for granted, especially, like, when you're a kid, because I did not like Star Trek as much as I do now when I was a kid. Because, I mean, you want action, you want fast-paced, and Star Trek was a very specific type of sci-fi.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a society where money is not a thing, where there's unity, there's no war, except, you know, Romulans and Klingons.
Well, that was the hilarious.
But all those go to an end
I mean,
eventually, you know?
and the whole point of the other species were that were kind of to model the different problems that we had with real cultures here on Earth. Like, each of those species was very, very specifically aimed, but not to be mean, but to bring up that there were these, like, kind of, like, cultural differences that existed between people, and that's why there was all this tension, because there was this lack of understanding.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, the Klingons are straight up the Japanese.
Yeah.
Like, 100%. The Cardassians are the Russians.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Romulans, would they be Germans?
Kind of. That one's like a little bit looser. The Romulans were really just kind of the flip on the Vulcans.
Right.
That one had less poignancy as far as like a real world tie-in.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it was not an attempt to like wave fingers at anybody or anything. It was an attempt to show like, hey, we don't understand this culture completely, and they don't understand our culture completely, and this is what happens when these two things collide and nobody's quite hearing each other out.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that was Roddenberry's whole thing. I mean, okay, so let's go back to the original Star Trek though. Like, I mean, like, all right, so it's 1966. Okay, so just if you remember anything about like the 60s from like, you know, history classes or just what people have told, the civil rights movement, like Vietnam, all kinds of things were happening at that point, and a major societal tone and shift was taking place. And Gene Roddenberry got a cast of like the rainbows of humanity onto his show. Like, it was like, and the producers were not happy about that either.
No.
They were not in favor of that. They were especially not in favor of what wouldn't come into fruition until, unfortunately, Gene Roddenberry died. Like, he fought for it forever and could never get it to land. He wanted the first captain to be a woman.
That seems to be pretty common with a lot of the sci-fi. Like, if you think about Star Wars, Luke was supposed to be a girl.
Yep.
This, where the first captain was supposed to be female. Like, it seems like that's a lot of, like, the creators want to be that because they want to be the, hey, I'm gonna be the first one that does this.
Yeah.
And then
And some people are like, no.
the producers are like, no.
Ooh, change? That's like
we'll let you have the Asian guy, the Scottish guy. We'll let you guys have those, but like a woman in power.
Oh, okay.
So you'll let a
I know
gay Asian guy on the board, but wait, he's gay?
He's gay.
Speaking of which,
You're out of here.
Winchester, I know you didn't get a chance to see the new Star Trek movie that came out. They actually like confirmed Sulu being gay in it.
Did they?
Like, you see his little girl and his husband. And
I remember
it is
reading about
adorable.
it. I remember reading about it when they first decided they were gonna do it, but I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it was really cute.
But to kind of go back to it and the whole and just the cast itself, the kiss between it's Shatner and Nichelle Nichols.
Yeah.
First interracial kiss on screen.
Yep.
Period.
Really?
Yes. And they weren't supposed to. I think it was like I don't remember. I'm sure it was scripted, but it like the way it went down was like they managed to sneak it through somehow to get it on air of like past the censors, but it was the very first interracial kiss on television.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
And there was some kind of deal to get it or some sort of like sneaky way they got it on air. But yeah, it was this huge thing.
Well, I mean, and that's what I really love about Star Trek too. That's so cool. I never knew that. Like, that's really cool because Star Trek is the ideal future.
Oh yeah.
It is very much the ideal future, and the more and more I get older, the more and more I really like it, and I see people, like, now that we have these new Star Trek movies coming out,
Right.
people are now starting to pay more attention to it.
It's being
Maybe
revisited.
and then people are going to watch, like, all the older stuff.
Also, a thing to note, something that was like slipped by the censors. I don't know if it was in the original show, but it was definitely they definitely did it in Next Generation. They didn't bring it to the foreground because they wanted to hide it from the producers, but they would have guys walking around in the female officers' uniforms. And basically the idea is like, okay, yes, we've got these uniforms that are gender specific to appease like the producers essentially. The idea being like you have a couple of uniform options essentially, and it's like up to you, like what you feel more comfortable in. And yes, more women wind up choosing the skirt, but there are dudes who do it too, and women who decide to wear pants.
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. I dig it.
But yeah, just the fact that it was very much, I guess, progressive for its time, especially.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Even
God,
for
yeah.
now, it kind of like you look at certain shows and you're like, really, like another like male lead, super great, whatever. But like even for now, like it's one of the more very much diverse cast. Like even if you think about like one of the big things that a lot of people don't like about Firefly is that even though it's supposed to be a mixture of the American and Chinese cultures because that's how the war went down. There's not a single Chinese person on the cast.
Right.
It's a bunch of extras, but there's no like Kaylee wasn't like
No
Chinese or anybody.
yeah.
Yeah, no main character was Chinese. And the fact that Star Trek, 40 years prior, did that,
Yeah.
and they got to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and more importantly, like let's remember, it hadn't been that long since World War II,
Right.
and it wasn't just an Asian dude they
No.
had sitting there driving the ship. It was a Japanese
guy.
dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah. Very.
Huge.
And I remember, I don't remember who was. Well, I remember reading an article. It was an interview, I believe, with Whoopi Goldberg because she's in TNG.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hang on. Before you go ahead and say it, and then we'll lament on Whoopi's character from TNG.
Who's amazing. God. But I believe she had been talking to Nichelle Nichols, who plays. I can never pronounce her name.
Uhura.
Yes. And because Nichelle Nichols was going to originally quit. Because they had given her so much crap and just like the harassment and wanting her to do this and that, and she was going to quit. And I guess Whoopi told her when she was able to, like, someone had come up to Nichelle Nichols and was like, don't you, I think it was Roddenberry. Roddenberry had gone up to her and he's like, don't you let them win. Do not let them, just keep doing it. You like it? Keep doing it.
Yeah.
And Whoopi Goldberg revealed later that she was like, the reason I wanted to be an actress because of you. And I wanted to be on Star Trek because of you.
Yeah.
So, like, the idea that, and that was one of Whoopi Goldberg's earlier
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
That was before
Yeah.
she had really gotten, like, huge.
big into comedy. And, like, the fact that cast kind of, because they were a minority, and because, Nichelle Nichols or George Takei, like, because they were on that show and kept fighting for it, regardless if it was 3 seasons, 1, whatever, you got to inspire these huge stars.
Yeah.
Like, it's it's
Which is
crazy.
phenomenal all in its own. Yeah.
Not to mention huge stars, astronauts. I've read articles of
Yep.
astronauts who are like, I saw Star Trek as a kid and wanted to be an astronaut, so
Yeah.
now I'm in space.
Well, yeah, and that's so like everything that Star Trek has given us. Like we have Palm Pilots.
Yeah.
Or not Palm Pilots. That's way that's
Palm
old.
Pilots.
We have
we
tablets.
still had those because of
No,
it.
Palm Pilots, tablets, cell phones,
Mm-hmm.
just everything.
Everything.
Oh my God! Like so much. What's the difference between sci-fi and science fiction? Is that it
just
can
have-
be real.
We haven't gotten there.
Yeah, it can be real. They think about it logically, pun intended.
Yeah.
And what could possibly become from the technology we have now, many years in the future. And yeah, I don't know. It's. Star Trek
I mean, yeah,
is-
no, Star Trek has been majorly influential in a lot of different ways. Actually, in one of my favorite ways, on the personal life and career of Patrick Stewart.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Oh, my God. When you talk about, like, everyone asks who your favorite captain was, like, okay, you've got Shatner.
Make it so.
And, like, Shatner's, like Kirk's this dirty fighter, and like you rewatch the old episodes, and he's such a dirty boxer, and like he doesn't fight fair. He just kind of throws himself at people.
He's kind of the worst. Like he's like a terrible Starfleet officer in a lot of ways.
He is, and he's like this space pirate basically. And that's what I love about the new movies is that they totally just take that character and run with it. Where he's like, I kind of just fucking lucked my way into this.
Yeah.
I just bullshit my way into it, but he's so smart that he can, and they really captured that part of him. And then you've got Picard, who's like the gentleman's gentleman, and is Patrick Stewart, who is everyone's just. I love him so much.
He's great. He's so great.
Oh yeah, he's fantastic.
He's like, yeah, I'm chivalrous, and I'm gonna win that way too.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
But, man, I have to say though, I think my favorite character in Star Trek ever would. It's kind of tough. I had like. Q is one of my favorites.
So good.
Like, hands down. But Data as well.
Data's good.
Well, hang on. Let's hang on. Roll that in the back of your thought because I actually didn't get to my point about about Patrick Stewart. Okay, so because yes, amazing captain. But here's the thing about his personal life as far as doing that show. Okay, so he came from a very, very broken home in a lot of different ways, and he got into acting at a young age, and it was like kind of his home, and so he took everything with it very, very seriously. And when he got to Star Trek, he was this like very well-known, no bullshit Shakespearean actor. And he was the only one besides the actress's name I cannot remember at the moment, but the woman who played Diana Troy. She was also a Shakespearean actress. And so he was known for just being entirely grouchy on the set and not liking what he considered lack of professionalism amongst the rest of his cast members. And one day, in particular, he came in and started yelling like crazy at him. He was just making really a fuss, basically. And she told him, Patrick, lighten up. And he did.
And he did.
And then he said that was literally like what it took, like, because this was somebody else that he respected a great deal. He always found her much more professional than everybody else. And so when she was like, oh, get over yourself. He really took it to heart and started trying to, like, he was like, all right, well, all these people, like, joke about and everything. And he started kind of just trying it. We wouldn't have the awesome Patrick Stewart today
if that didn't happen.
If that didn't happen. He would have just remained that old crabby. I mean, look at how he looks now in comparison to then and how it's exactly the same. That means all of that aging that he did was in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
He stressed himself into looking like that at a very, very young age.
Wow.
And he hasn't aged a day really since Star Trek ended.
No, not really. Because
he learned to lighten up. He learned to start having fun with life.
Yeah.
And we would not have gotten Professor X.
No.
We wouldn't have just gotten the amazing
dude
dude
who
who
wears
wears
voices and the voices for American Dad.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Yes,
Many
as the head of the
things.
CIA. Oh my God!
All of the genre characters that he plays that are so iconic, he would have probably just gone back to the theater and stayed with the theater.
Played the King of England in Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Yeah.
Definitely would not have done that. I don't think without Star Trek.
He was in a version of, speaking of Shakespeare, he was in a version of Hamlet with David Tennant.
He was.
Yes.
He was.
Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah, just despite he's a Shakespearean actor to a T.
Yeah.
But he's so funny, and just his comedic characters are just, you wouldn't expect it until you see him do something like American Dad
and he is just
he's
hysterical.
Just so funny.
Which, by the way, I love that all started because on Family Guy they wanted to do a joke about him and the crew members making fun of Worf's head.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he just agreed to come on and do it because whenever because Seth MacFarlane, whenever he's like making fun of somebody in particular, always kind of invites them to make fun of themselves first. Which, good on you. That's actually a very classy move on your part.
Shocking.
Yeah, shockingly. But But I don't think he probably would have expected Patrick Stewart to say yes, and he did.
Yeah. It was like, fuck it, let's try it. And
Yeah,
see. And then he was like, yeah, sure,
yeah,
I'll totally
sure.
do it.
Like, yeah. So, and that was the best part too. Anytime they needed to make a Star Trek joke, they could actually get Patrick Stewart to come and do it.
So yeah, like we're kind of going back into TNG and just the amount of people. I follow the first guy I really followed on Twitter was Will Wheaton.
Oh yeah.
And he gives a lot of background into being a teenager in that kind of setting.
Mm-hmm.
He regrets doing a lot of the things he did because he was influenced by a lot of people he didn't know better. Like he was super awkward, super anxiety kind of thing. And so you get to see kind of a behind the scenes when you follow Will on any social media stuff.
Yeah.
And the fact that you'll watch him on Twitter, and every so often he'll get to reunite with some of his Star Trek co-stars. It's just like watching the Firefly cast. It's like they've never left each other.
Oh wow.
They get along, and even the Firefly cast, some of them don't get along anymore, which is sad. But they get along. They act like a family. They still do the conventions and the photo ops, and they hang out and they go on each other's shows.
Yeah.
And just like the fact that they do this kind of stuff still, and it's been it was 1987 to 1994.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been what 94, 2004, 2014, so 22 years since it got canceled.
Wow. Yeah.
And or since it ended, I guess. I don't know if you would say it got canceled.
I mean, it technically did.
But they got
no, actually they did end. Like I think they did. It wasn't a surprise because they did end it. They ended it because it was a Q story at the end, like it was at the beginning.
Yeah.
Which is just God. Okay, because you said Q is your favorite character, right? Let's talk about favorite characters for a second. Go ahead and get Q.
Q is just I love him because he's just this. You can't even describe him. You can't even describe like what he is exactly. He's just very powerful and very mischievous.
Yeah.
Like he's not necessarily malicious, but he's not necessarily your friend.
He's an antagonizer.
Yeah, he is. He definitely is. He's like an anti-hero, if anything, because he's not all bad, but then you get like characters like Data and those episodes where he feels or like stuff like that. It's just like Data.
Data is a really, really cool character. I don't know if he's my favorite. I'm trying to pinpoint who I would say my favorite. Although Data is fantastic. I mean, and I like that there's kind of been a Data for every Star Trek series to some extent or another. Yeah. Okay, so like it all starts with Spock.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Spock is like the original Data. So Spock, then it's Data, then it's Odo. And then it's the Doctor.
Yeah.
Everyone's kind of had this, like, they're not quite human, but they're sort of learning to be human. Which is interesting that they decided that, like, that was always relevant enough to bring up. And more importantly, that they found an interesting way of, doing it each time and not, like, making it sort of the same old thing. Like, every one of them had their own quirks about trying to, figure out.
Right, and trying to relate to the rest of the, maybe not necessarily all human crew, but partially human crew, or like a crew that knows how to interact with people.
Right.
So then you get, and even just in TNG, you get a pretty diverse cast of, that kind of thing where it's a cultural different. They're talking about cultural differences, or they're talking about, even time differences, because they spend a lot of time in different like cultures and time area, time periods with the holographs.
Oh, with the hologram, the holo room?
Yeah, the holo room. So you get to see a lot of, their cast might not be necessarily as diverse as the original crew was.
Yeah.
But you still get to see how they interact with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, well, the holodeck presents its own interesting set of character dynamic and characters itself.
Yeah.
Moriarty.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so another not human learns to be human type of situation. Yeah. Moriarty, and the fact that Data creates him too is just another level of poetic beauty that, delicious, absolutely delicious. No, that the holodeck. Oh my god, that was killing me because I kept saying it. I'm like, no, I'm not saying the right word. Holodeck, because it's a deck on a ship.
It is a deck on a ship.
Oh. Lovely.
That's Spike too.
Burps are loud. As we found out here today. Okay.
I reached decibels, yo.
Oh, okay. You know what? I've been looking through some characters. Here's somebody who's worth noting that isn't like considered even really necessarily a main character, but it's a Deep Space Nine character, Garrick.
Okay.
Garrick is, I don't remember if you guys remember this guy. He's the tailor aboard Deep Space Nine. He owns a tailor shop. Except he's totally not just a tailor. Like, he's straight up, like, old school Cardassian, like, probably assassin, but definitely spy master of some kind. And and he's got this relationship with Dr. Bashir, who knows that there's something up with him because he's obsessed with like spy fantasies and stuff. Like he plays on the holodeck through like lots of like James Bond-esque scenarios and stuff. Like that's kind of like his shtick.
Yeah.
And so like he figures out really quickly that there's something wrong with this guy. But he doesn't like try to go like, oh, I'm gonna, like that. He develops a friendship with him instead. And, like, kind of, like, just tries to get him to slip up and tell him information. And they have these meetings where they try to play mind games with each other.
That's awesome.
It's so good. But, I mean, and you do find... And you never figure out what his position is specifically. But you do find out that, yes, he was a part of Cardassian intelligence. And at one point got, like, disgraced. And so he wound up just being on the old Cardassian space station, like, when it left. It was assumed for a long time that he might be a spy, like, exchanging information back directly, which he totally has, but he's not specifically there to do, per se. Right. He's a very unclear character that they never really clear up. And I think that's one of the reasons I find him so fascinating is because they won't tell you quite everything, and they let him be the mystery that he's supposed to be, which is fantastic.
Right.
Are we doing on time?
We can probably chat for we just crossed the half an hour, but I'm willing to let it go another few minutes just to talk a little bit more here.
Sure.
Cause all right, so we've talked about TNG, we talked about the original series and stuff. Talked about Deep Space Nine a little. Let's talk about Voyager.
I didn't really watch much of Voyager.
Oh, okay. Did either of you do a whole lot of Voyager?
Bit of
okay.
Was that the one with the chick Vulcan?
No.
Which
Oh no.
that?
That was Enterprise, which don't get me wrong, was a very, very entertaining series. That was the prequel series that they made. But
it was a prequel series.
Yeah, it was a prequel series.
It was just when everything was starting to kind of. They were starting.
Starfleet wasn't even a thing yet.
Yeah,
okay.
It was when they were.
Starfleet wasn't even a thing, and the Federation was a million years away. Well, not a million, but it was a long ways out before the Federation would even start. Because Starfleet comes first. Like Starfleet kind of forms, and then around it, the Federation is born.
Right.
And there wasn't even Starfleet yet. It was just the Earth's crew.
Right.
On the first Enterprise ever.
Gotcha.
And it was an alright show, but the biggest problem that they had was they didn't do a contemporary orchestral composition for the intro. They did one of the worst country rock tunes I have ever heard in my life. Oh, it was terrible.
Yeah.
I blame its cancellation entirely on that theme song. Like, I think just even people who liked it, just after a while, they turn that on. Like, I can't even with this stupid fucking theme song. Enterprise theme song. Just YouTube it and don't have a gun nearby you.
Don't have a gun nearby you.
Because you will shoot the computer or yourself, whichever you feel is quicker at the moment.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the one. Oh, I remember. I've seen some of this. Okay, yeah, this is the one with the female captain.
Yeah.
Yes.
Voyager we're talking about. Yeah, Voyager.
Yeah.
And that's one of my reasons that's a very close second for me is that it had a female captain, which again is what he wanted to do from the beginning. It's why his belief that women were actually he actually had put it as like potentially superior as far as administrative roles to men. His wife is the one who did, and I think continues in any case where they need it, to play the voice of the computer.
I think so.
Then both Next Generation and all the series afterward.
I think so.
And that's gonna be fun in the new universe if they ever like bring the computer into it, because anyway.
But to go about Roddenberry just real quick, I love that his family's still so involved.
Yes.
Like his kid is really involved, and he does all of the the foundations, and they check with him on like certain canon things, and he's involved in all the conventions, and the fact that his family is still very much involved in his creations, it makes me happy.
Well, I mean, I think they really have created a family network for themselves. Like Star Trek. Star Trek it's no matter who's like owned like the rights to it and everything, and what like there's for instance, everything that's ever been used prop or costume wise is stored at like a generalized facility that is specifically Star Trek. They do nothing but Star Trek stuff.
Yeah,
that's it. They in-house everything, and then they basically rent all the costumes and props and chips and shit to like whatever production company is like actually has the rights and are doing the things, which include the new movies.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And they actually just I remember this because they were doing a special about, because the 50th was coming up. They decided they were going to donate a number of things to the Smithsonian.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
So they were kind of going around and touring the warehouse and everything. But Voyager, very cool because it was like the original Star Trek and Next Generation, in that it was like that, like, yes, we're going to explore new places. But it wasn't out of scientific expedition. It was out of a necessity, because they were on the other side of the galaxy, stranded basically, just trying to slowly make their way home at a speed that was never really going to get them there. Damn. And so they were constantly, and part of like the different plot points of it all was that they occasionally would find, a bend in space or some kind of alien technology that would just keep kind of pushing them. Or, just Cass, because she did that one time. But you guys have no idea what I'm talking about. Hopefully somebody got that. God. There's a character, Cass. They meet her in the first episode. Her species only lived to be about 12, 14 years.
Okay.
So she's like 6. But she is a fully grown woman.
Sure.
It's a very weird thing. And they meet her and this guy, Neelix, who becomes the ship's cook. Together, and like they basically get out of the situation and stuff. But her species kind of has like these untapped telepathic things going on, which Tuvok helps her sort of channel. Tuvok being the Vulcan security officer on the show, and she gets like basically Phoenix powerful,
like you do,
like. And not like in any kind of way that is sustainable. Like she's like kind of like killing herself and destroying things around her and stuff. But like, so right before she like leaves the ship for the last time, she like basically does this thing, and somehow Voyager is like something like 62 light years or something like that further home than they had been, because they're several thousand light years.
Yeah,
several 100,000 light years away from home, if I'm not very much mistaken. Because the whole thing is that they go investigate a ship that's been lost in this nebula, which is a Maquis ship, which ties back into Deep Space Nine stuff. Maquis being this sort of resistance that is sprung up amongst people in the Federation and allied territories that are kind of sick of not dealing with the Cardassians. The Kardashians and the Cardassians. Both of them must go. And have sort of like formed like a kind of like pirate resistance unit essentially, but there's a Maquis ship that's gone missing, and because Starfleet is Starfleet, they go and like look for them, because it's like, well, they're not our enemies. Like, they're criminals, but they're not our enemies, and it's our due diligence to go get our citizens.
Right.
Well, the Maquis ship winds up falling apart, but Voyager survives the trip over, and basically, and that's the other interesting thing about Voyager, is that it's not a full Starfleet crew. Because about half of the crew dies, like, in the first episode. Like, major hull breaches happen, people get sucked down into space, killed in explosions, and then there's, like, half of this crew from the Maquis ship, and they sort of just slap it. She actually loses her, Captain Janeway loses her first officer in that episode. And Chakotay, the guy who becomes the first officer, was the captain of the Maquis ship. And so part of, like, the dynamic for the first couple of seasons is everybody, like, trying to get along, even though they've just been kind of, like, in this, like, war with each other.
Right, you're trying to slap together two crews. Who do you listen to, even though one has title of captain, but if you follow the original captain, who's now second mate, or, you know, left hand, you know, who do you follow?
I think what I really do like about it, though, is that it has, because of these type of things, it has a lot of political intrigue in it. But it is still an exploration show because they're desperately trying to find anything that will get them home. Yeah, and there's sort of a nostalgia factor again because I watched it with my family growing up. Like, that was, like, it was a show that we all watched together, and but yeah, I mean, Star Trek is just, all right. Well, we've talked about pretty much everything at this point except for the new movies, which I've now seen all of them. I know that Professor, you didn't ever actually watch Into Darkness, but I told you the basic stuff about it. And then you haven't.
I've seen the first two.
You've seen the first two. What I would say is that they've really, and I think this is because of producers, they're really, really focused on the combat stuff when I don't necessarily know if they need to be. Granted, it's a lot of fun. Not gonna try to deny that it's a whole lot of fun. But I was really happy in this movie to see that they had pulled back on it some. They, like, got you with it, like, right at the beginning, and then there were some really important combat sequences that were going to take place. But a lot of it was about using technology to get themselves out of impossible situations, which I feel is, like, vintage fucking Star Trek. Like, that is, like, oh, let's try to use this thing in a way that it's totally not supposed to be used in order to solve this problem that we have no other solutions to. I mean, that's what a lot of Star Trek episodes boil down to.
That's pretty much what it was.
And that's what Star Trek Beyond really was in a lot of ways, and on multiple different fronts. Like, they kept solving a problem, and a new one would come up, and they'd have to do something fucking crazy to get out of it. And
these B ships have a hive mind, so let's blast the Beastie Boys so I'll get them confused.
I don't care how lame that was. I loved it.
I loved it too, especially when Bones was saying, "Is this classical music?"
Because they basically did a reference back to the first movie with the Beastie Boys. Which I thought was awesome. I also think this is probably the end of it seems like very much the end of the new Star Trek movies. Which is exciting because now they can start looking into television show territory, which I want. Which for the record, if anybody ever actually winds up hearing this thing and cares about my opinion, I want a new Star Trek series in this new universe that has been set up. I think.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think you've got a whole, because things have changed so much now because of the influences of Ambassador Spock and the destruction of Vulcan. You have such a rich new universe to play around with and pull our nostalgia strings. Like, it'd be very silly, I think, not to try to produce a new series in this universe. And I think it'd be a lot of fun. I think you should get Simon Pegg involved because he was one of the writers on this new script, and
I think he did a good job.
He did a really good job. Also, way to work in your character and work him the girlfriend. That was hilarious.
Yeah, I was like, oh, all right.
So 2017 is when it's supposed to be called Star Trek Discovery. It's supposed to be on CBS.
Oh, okay, good. They are in the works. Excellent.
Brian Fuller is gonna be creating and producing. And you would know Brian Fuller from things like he was creator of Dead Like Me, Hannibal. What else? He's been anything that you've seen, like pretty much anything that's like cult classic that you're like, oh my god, it was amazing, but it was killed too soon. That's Brian Fuller.
Okay, well, while that gives me great admiration for the job you might do, I'm sort of worried now.
Everything he does is just
Get ready
it's
to
phenomenal.
love it a lot.
Yeah.
For one season.
He's casting American Gods. He did Pushing Daisies.
The casting for American Gods has been
so good.
really
And we have
cool
to- we're gonna have
recently.
to
too.
do
We're
that
gonna
in
have to
the
talk
opening
about that, but
episode.
yeah.
He did Heroes. let's not let that one. If you remember Wonder Falls, which was a short little thing, he was actually part of Star Trek Voyager. He's actually part of the Star Trek family.
I mean, it's gotta be him then.
So
I mean, yeah.
the fact that he's gonna work on it makes me really excited, especially if they kind of take it with the new movies, I guess you would say, like this universe, and kind of bring it into TV. I'm really hoping that they kind of keep that same that feeling.
Yeah.
And that same just kind of, because I like the feeling of, you've got those funny moments where, Kirk goes and leaps off the side of a planet, and Bones is just like, fuck, and just follows him. And like, you've got those moments where it's just like, the characters are absolutely perfect.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm hoping that they keep that.
I'm not gonna lie, I am mildly worried about it being on CBS.
Yeah, CBS isn't always the greatest.
I also don't understand, like, these movies have been pretty successful, right? Like, I don't think they've done, like, Avengers money or anything like that, but, like,
no, they're still pretty successful.
They've been pretty good. I don't quite understand why they didn't think to maybe go for, like, a Showtime thing or, like, an HBO or, hell, Netflix, because, let's face it, Netflix has managed to get itself on that level.
They might have fallen into a licensing thing where they can't do Netflix because Netflix is doing all the Marvel stuff, or HBO maybe didn't want it. Although, you would think that anybody would probably want a Star Trek thing.
Yeah, who doesn't want Star Trek, man?
But at the same time, maybe they didn't want to go to something that's behind a paywall.
Yeah.
Because that's what sucks about American Gods is American Gods is on Showtime. Well, you have to pay to get Showtime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe they wanted to make it the same cultural phenomenon that it's been, but not make it so inaccessible.
Right.
Because at least you could get it on Hulu, or, if CBS's video player isn't as shitty as it used to be. Stuff like that they might be able to try and get it to access to everybody, kind of
right.
thing, or a larger audience.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think CBS is where it originally aired too, right?
Yeah, no, ABC, I think.
Was it?
I think it was originally ABC.
I think CBS had it for a while though in re-syndication. Holding for fact checking.
I read it earlier. Now I don't remember. Oh, it was CBS. Yeah.
Yes, I knew
it.
it.
So maybe that's another reason they tried to bring it home.
if that's the reasoning, well, CBS, don't screw it up, because seriously, you guys have been kind of weak sauce for the last 10 years. Like, use this to get back on your feet. Seriously.
Hopefully.
All right. But that has been us on Star Trek. I mean, we could talk for hours about this, but we've already hit past the 45-minute mark over here. Oh, by the way, sorry, I've been playing around with a couple of the settings with this microphone here, so if there's a couple of pops and stuff, my apologies.
Deal with it.
All right. This has been the Geek for All. Thank you, Winchester and Professor Weirdfuck, for joining me again, as always.
Absolutely.
All of you out there, you have yourselves a lovely evening. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
The music for the Geek for All show has been provided by Fat Street Beats, Ben Sound, and Purple Planet. Please support their individual pages.